Welcome to everyone. It's great to have you with us on this Friday. Hope you're doing really, really well. My name's Matt Stevens. I'm founder, CEO of Impulse, an employee engagement platform. And just say, as Lucy said, it's a thrill to have you here with us. We never take it for granted that you've chosen to give us your time on this Friday. So thanks for joining. And I'm delighted to say I'm here with my good friend and the CEO founder of Imagine Insights, Jay Richards.
Hey, thank you, Matt. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know. I said, hey, this
no,
afternoon. But
I liked how you did that. So you're probably wondering where we are. Where are we, Jay? Actually, I don't know. You brought me into this room. Where are we?
He seems a little bit nervous about it. No, so we're in Shoreditch in East London, and we're in the wellbeing room because I don't know why we're in the wellbeing room. It's the only one that I could book without getting any trouble. So
it's a good room to be in.
We're in the
it's very topical. Fantastic. So listen, as usual, you know I'm very relaxed with the way we run the webinars, but always after the value bombs, always after insights that you can take away and you can use in discussions with your teams, with those who are more seniors, execs in your organization to help in the conversations you're having. And really today, I guess just to frame it, we advertise it sort of, you know, what's going on with Gen Zs when it comes to engagement. For us, it's very much about starting the conversation about the things that you need to be thinking about, the things you need to be talking about, and the things that need to be on your radar when it comes to Gen Z. But before we get into that, I think it'd be really helpful. Oh, sorry, just one other thing to say. We are trialing this new approach because we've had a little bit of feedback around, can we be a bit more interactive? So rather than just people put their questions, could people actually speak? So we're like, you know what, let's be radical today. We're in Gen Z land, right? So I'm already nervous. Although I think I am a millennial. I like to put myself as a millennial. Anyway. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't say that. I didn't say anything.
So we'd love you to just let Lucy know, say, put your hand up, and then she'll unmute you. And that'll be coming in about 20 minutes time. So please do stay tuned, listen in, get your questions ready. But what we thought we'd do first is just kind of share some of the insights, and I'll just kind of interview Jay effectively to go, what's going on? Tell us what you're seeing and what we need to be thinking about. But before we do that, Jay, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to this point of being CEO and founder?
Perfect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the age-old thing that we all love at the moment of sharing my screen. So this is us, Imagine Insights. And how did we get here? So obviously, I'm Jay Richards, co-founder and CEO here at Imagine Insights. And as Matt said, a good friend of his. And really, the journey here was actually, I was running a startup incubator in the secondary school and helping young people start their own businesses, investing my money. But while I was doing that, Facebook asked me to go and speak at a conference for them. I spoke at this conference, brought a whole bunch of young people along with me and said, hey, get as much food as you can into your backpack. So I brought all these young people to this conference with me. But when I was there, the NFL, so the NFL, National Football League, they saw me speak. They were like, hey, we're not really interested in the startup stuff, but we hear you have a connection to all these young people. And they asked us if we could help them to create a marketing campaign with young people aimed at young people. And that sparked an idea in my mind. I was like, why is the big NFL coming to me, just a small startup incubator founder? And it turned out this problem the NFL were having of gaining insights from Gen Z was a problem countless brands were having. So that's when Imagine Insights was started. And my co-founder and I got it off the ground. And this is where we are now.
That's not a bad story. You dropped in Facebook asking you to come speak. You dropped in the NFL, which stands for
National Football.
There you go. That's it. So it's not the UK, it's from the States. So that's pretty impressive, right? That these two brands recognized you and saw the what you were offering and how you could help them. So that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about Imagine Insights then. That's a little bit of your journey, but tell us what is Imagine Insights all about?
Yeah, perfect. So our mission at Imagine Insights is to help Gen Z to shape their future. And we know the best way for them to do that is with brands, because brands are shaping countries and culture like governments only wish they could do, right? So what we do is we enable brands to crowdsource qualitative or quantitative insight from our community. So we have a community over 10,000 Gen Z around the world. We're growing at 50 people a day, so about 2,000 a month. It's absolutely insane. We're in 57 countries, over from the US to the UK to Spain. We're literally everywhere. And one of the great things about our community is how diverse they are. So 60% female, 35% Black, 25% Asian, 20% from the LGBT community, 20% from a low income background, and 10% disabled. So when we say we're diverse, we actually are. And one of the reasons why brands love working with us is because they can crowdsource insight from our Gen Z community within 72 hours. We built a beautiful piece of technology that just speeds up the insight gathering process and makes it really awesome for brands. So some of our clients include Amazon Prime Video, Sky, the NFL, obviously, Gymshark, eBay, whole bunch of others. So if you go on the website, you'll see all the brands there, which is amazing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. And I think what I like about that is, as we're going to come on to the insights around engagement and the workplace of the future and what they're expecting, the reason I wanted to run this was because I like the idea of shaping the future. And in a lot of the conversations I have with HR directors and people directors, a lot comes to, okay, Matt, we kind of know what to do now. We're pretty okay for the next, 3-5 years. We can kind of see it. And by the way, corporates generally, forgive me for saying this to all of you, but corporates go a little bit slower than often smaller companies, but they're thinking about the next beyond the 5 years, like what do we need to be thinking about? And also with COVID and everything that's gone on there, it feels like it's sped up some of those kind of issues that were boiling around, even like we were joking around with well-being. I always say it went from being like this performative thing that people were playing around with, like, hey, take a duvet day, aren't we really super cool? And that's what Gen Z want, to actually understanding the different factors involved in well-being, understanding it's about financial, it's about mental, it's about how people see their future. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting to that. And I love the community you've built. I mean, that's incredible. How have you done that?
So it's actually a lot of it was seriously organic. So a lot of our internal team, they will spend a lot of time in Reddit, on Network, on Discord, just going to these platforms and really just engaging with Gen Z in these platforms, trying to understand, okay, what do you care about? And then inviting them into our community. And then what we have is we pay our Gen Z community for every insight they provide. What happens is when we pay a community member, on average, they then refer 2 to 5 people into the community. So it's amazing. So it's really amazing viral feedback loop where it's kind of like, actually, you know what? I've been paid. This is legit. It's a real thing. And then they start inviting friends. So yeah, we're growing at about 2,000 people a month, which is really, really
so cool. The business in me is thinking for everyone listening, if you have a child who's aged
16 to 27,
you should be contacting Jason and get them on that panel. That's a nice way for them to make a little bit of money. So no, it's really, really helpful to know. So let's get into it and let's understand who are Gen Z, because we can keep referring to them. So tell us, like, what, because even when I was telling some people about this, like, well, so what's that? Is that like 15 to 25? Is that like for 30? No one knows. So here you go.
Yeah, perfect. So who are Gen Z? So a couple of key characteristics and just an overview, really. So Gen Z, they're aged between 8 to 27 years old. So a lot of the time, brands or companies don't realize that Gen Z are already in your workplace. They're already in your team. They're already in your workplace. So those are the demographics and demographic age split that we're looking at. And their spending power is rising to 4.4 trillion over the next few years, which is a lot of money on the table. And this is why you'll see at the moment, type Gen Z on Google, and all you're going to see is copious amounts of articles talking about Gen Z, because everybody knows it's such a hot topic. And one to remember and to keep in mind is Generation Alpha. So they're the ones coming up next. So bear that in mind for another day. But there's 3 key characteristics around Gen Z that are really interesting. So the first thing is that they're activists. If you look at anything that's happening in the world, whether this is the Black Lives Matter movement, anything with regards to gender equality, Gen Z are normally leading the charge. They're the ones that are at the forefront. They're the ones that are really shouting and screaming about it. And they love to protest. They love to stand up for what is important to them, which is really, really cool.
And can I just check, because I always think Greta Thunberg is like the classic example of...
Definitely. Great example. There's loads of folks just like her. They're out there just leading the charge with that. And then they are co-creators. So with millennials, like Matt and I, maybe, with millennials, we love to be the face of things. I want to be on the podcast. I want to be on the webinar. I want to be the CEO. Interview me. I'm amazing. But Gen Z just want to create cool things with cool people. They're not so focused on who gets all the attention. They just want to create cool things with cool people. And you can see this on TikTok. A lot of time you see on TikTok, there's some really great ways of adding in videos into other people's, like, collaborating together. And they do that really, really well. And then the last thing to mention is, as you will all know, they are digital natives. So unlike millennials, they've grown up with technology the entire time. So for them, having an iPhone and having constant updates and being spammed with messages is normal to them. Their attention span is 8 seconds. So they are ready to go at any period of time. So if you're trying to catch the attention of Gen Z in a YouTube video or any kind of content, those first 8 to 10 seconds are crucial, because they are digital natives. So if it's trash in those first 8 to 10 seconds, they're out.
I'm thinking, for those of you listening from HR or people background, that 8 to 10 seconds, thinking about corporate life, thinking about some of the communications that happen, the town halls, and all the sort of different communications that happen from the company. Often the first 8 to 10 seconds are the most boring. I hate to say it, forgive me, and I've been involved in many times myself, but it's like, you know, the CEO's just winding up, is just kind of gearing into it. And it's like, it's not exciting, it's not attention grabbing, it doesn't make you want to read on or listen on. Often it's the opposite. So I think already there's a value bomb there. That first 8 to 10 seconds of any communications you're doing as a or as an organization, particularly thinking if you've got lots of Gen Z, then that really, really matters. So think about how you can capture them so they keep on listening. Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, a little more.
Yeah, so perfect. So what we're going to deep dive into now, so obviously Matt, know him really, really well, and obviously love Impulse and everything that Matt and the team do. And when we were speaking about doing this webinar, we were both talking, Matt and I was like, it'd be great to have some fresh data, like data from this week. So as you guys already know, we do everything quickly, 72-hour turnaround. So we were like, okay, what fresh data can we get on Gen Z, but specifically around engagement and employability, their wellness in the workplace, emotional understanding in the workplace, all of these things that are really, really key. So these are some overview stats, and then we're going to deep dive into some further things in a second. So from a demographics perspective, of the folks that completed this brief for us, the average age was 20 years old. It was a nice, healthy mix of 53% male, 47% female, which is a great mix to have. And this is the interesting one. This is the reason why I pulled this one out. Where do you go for reliable information? And all of us naturally would think social media, would be thinking the TikToks, the Instagrams, but actually TikTok was the least trusted source of information for them, the least trusted by Gen Z, average age 20 years old. So that then makes us think, okay, actually, what are they going on to TikTok for? It's a whole nother conversation we can have another time, but something to really, really bear in mind. It's the least trusted source for reliable information. And then the last thing was, how do you feel about your future career? Anxious and enthusiastic. It's like such a juxtaposition. It's like, okay, you're anxious about it, but you're also really excited about it. And the crazy thing was 76% of our community said that's how they feel, anxious and excited. So they're ready to go, but at the same time, they're unsure. We're going to deep dive into some of those things.
Just on that, I found that fascinating. So those of you know who Impulse, a little bit about Impulse, what differentiates our point of difference is that we ask the emotion question. So how do people feel about working at your organization? And we get them to fill out 2 emotions, a primary and a secondary. And so the reason we set this up like this was to kind of complement what we do and to find out where they were. And interesting, we call this the conflicted group. So they're conflicted because they've chosen one positive and one negative. And often they as you said, they are in conflict because there is both going on and they can be won over. So I am intrigued that they were, and we are, so they get more into this, but fascinating to see that they've got this anxiety about their future career and this worry, and we'll get into some of the reasons why, alongside the enthusiastic as well.
I love that somebody's already jumped in on the Q&A. So excited. That's all we need. And I love what Matt was just saying a second ago about what Impulse and Imagine Insights does, because we're both doing quite similar things. Because Impulse is asking, okay, what's really going on behind the scenes? So what are their real emotions behind the scenes? And that's exactly what we're doing at Imagine Insights. I love quant data, but now we're going to show you some of the qual, because that's the stuff that gets me really excited. So what's really, really going on? So what do Gen Z want? And you can see here, let me move this out of the way. I don't know if it's going to show up on that one. Gen Z wants a clear career trajectory mapped out from day one. And this is something that came up time and time again when we were looking through the qualitative responses. They were going, hey, I want to know where I'm going for the next 5 years. And the reason why they gave this answer, we asked them, what would keep you in a company for the next 5 to 10 years? And they would say, just a clear trajectory. I want to know that when I get in, I know exactly where I'm going. So I know if I hit these key targets, my salary will increase by £1,000, and also my title will go to this. That's what was very important to them. Employers must be transparent in all aspects of the business. For them, it was very key that the employer was saying, hey, you know what? We made a mistake here, and these are the changes we're looking to make going forward to ensure that mistake doesn't happen. Or just in general, hey, this is what's going on in all aspects of the business. Nothing is being hidden. There aren't any things that are being put away. We're not sticking people in the well-being room hidden away. These are the things that are important that we want everybody to know. The third and second to last thing that we're going to mention is the variety of working within that role. So for them, it's going, hey, I want different things. I don't want to just be doing one stuck role the entire time. And I probably to say this is true of most generations, and probably not my parents' generation, but definitely millennials and younger, is, hey, we just want that variety. We want to be doing different things. This is something that came up time and time again. And the last one, this is one you'll all know, diversity must be front and center. And for a lot of our community, we're not talking about performative diversity. Like, hey, this is the one black person in the company, they're gonna be on all the leaflets, they're gonna be on everything, we're gonna put them on the front. Michael, you're gonna be on the front of everything. It's actually going, you know what, diversity is important to us because we know internally if we have a diverse team, we're just gonna perform better. Because it's true. Statistically, if there are more women in the company, so there's an equal balance of women and men, the company just performs better if it's a majority male company. So diversity is key. And then we always love to pull out some qualitative insights off the back of that. My favorite one is this is a big juicy one. Being part of something special goes deeper than the definition of company culture. Culture is the collective thinking and behavior of a company. Being part of something special taps into the emotional connections, this is what we were speaking about a second ago, the emotional connections that feed a sense of pride and belonging, most importantly, exclusiveness. They stay because all they would, to take a new company is their reputation. Recognition and respect would have to be earned all over again. So they're staying in your company because they truly believe in what you're doing. And there is an emotional connection. And what we're learning from Gen Z is that you can get them to feel that emotional connection of being in your company, they will stay for a longer period of time.
I mean, you're doing a great sell job for why you'd have Impulse, because that's what we measure to go, are they emotionally connected? But on a serious note, I mean, so much value there. And we are going to come to some Q&As, and please keep capturing them. We're going to do probably another 5-10 minutes. Just I want to get some more content out, and then really keen for you to start asking questions. Please start thinking about them. But the reason I also mention that is because we see when we ask them how they're feeling, one of the emotions we have is committed. And committed, then we discovered over the years, is it has 3 levels. And the worst level for the company is personal commitment. So whereas people have said, I feel this emotion and this emotional connectedness because of my own personal commitment. And that typically means I'm just the type of person who will always give my best regardless. Then the second is commitment to the team, which is better for the organization, because what that's saying is, actually, I feel a connection to the people I work with, and that helps me feel part of the team, and therefore I enjoy being here. The best level of commitment that you want to see is actually commitment to the organization. And so interesting, because we see in all our surveys, that comes because of a belonging and a sense of being part of something that's going somewhere and has something beyond just, I'm just doing my job. So it is a belonging piece, but it's also a purpose piece, if that makes sense. So it's so fascinating to see from this literally hot off the press this week, what are Gen Z thinking about as they're coming into the workplace. It is these kind of things. Has this organization got purpose? Am I going to feel a sense of belonging there? I want to be emotionally connected to it. And I was smiling as well when you were talking about they want a clear career trajectory. Because I was thinking, I can think of so many my age and above who are going, yeah, I would have liked one too. Because often that's the response, isn't it? It's like, yeah, look at you. And it's like, how do we shift that? Yeah. Because that is a problem. The other one I just want to touch on is diversity. This is really interesting. You and I have talked about this a lot, diversity and inclusion. We've talked about it from how do we not make it performative. But I also want to be really honest and say, a conversation I'm having with a number of different very senior people, from CEO through to some other exec in a number of organizations, is they are struggling to convince their white, middle-aged, middle-class men that this is the right thing to do. And actually, as much as they're trying to change things at the top, a lot of the promotion boards and the choosing who's coming into the organization is still with typically white, middle-aged, middle-class men. And so it's like saying to them, look, don't try and block this, because there's a fear. I'm being really honest, Jay. What they're saying to me sort of behind the scenes is there's a fear there from these line managers that what it is a zero-sum game. I'm going to lose my job. Someone else is going to get it who's not me. So how do we help, thinking of everyone listening, how do we help frame this? Because it is, but the reason I raise it is because you've got everyone coming in going, hey, diversity is really super important to me. And you've got all these people in the workplace going, well, yeah, we see that, but I'm worried that what that means is it means I'm gone. So 100%. How to help these HR and people directors know what to do? It's
a really good question. And I think that the best thing I always say this to any of our clients, I say, you can't argue with data. And I think the best way of actually helping them to feel more comfortable with this is actually saying to them, hey, here is the data of what will happen if we, so other large organizations, this is what happened when they ensured that diversity was within their company. It was a core part of their company. This is what happened with the metrics. This is where it went. And it's very easy to find that data because diversity is a hot topic right now. So you can find this data, these white papers all over the place. And for a lot of these folks, especially with the older school generation, even with myself, if somebody brings me data, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with the numbers. If I've said, okay, this is where we were profitability-wise in 2019, we then began to have a more diverse staff, and now in 2021, this is where we are. I can't argue with that. And I think the best way, instead of trying to in some way coerce people into it, or sometimes it can get a bit like, oh, actually, you know what, you should feel bad for not wanting to do this. But a lot of time it isn't that people are horrible people, it's just they're not used to that. It's just not what they're used to. I'm used to middle-class white dudes being around me, so why the heck am I going to change that and hire anybody else? But actually, if you show them, from a data perspective, this will make your team perform better, this will enable the company perform better, that's a great way. And then the second way of doing it, if people are really, really, really resistant, is actually tying their comp or their bonuses to actually making sure that they hire diversity. And this is a huge one where for organizations, we speak to a lot of brands about this. We did some great work with Gymshark around HR side of things, and they're already insanely diverse anyway, but it was a great piece of work to do with them. And one of the key things we found was if you can link the leaders' comp or their bonus to actually making sure that they hire diversity, because you're saying to them, hey, this is better for our bottom line, so we need you to change because it's going to help our bottom line. If you can then link their comp and their bonus to it, they will change so quickly. They'll be ready to go for it. So it's not going to be an easy overnight thing, but it's definitely, there's a couple of ways you could really try and move the needle.
And I think a point you made powerfully through the data, not just that we've done here, but you've shared previously in conversations we've had around diversity being front and center, is that, and if you don't, you're going to lose the best talent because they are coming and going, it matters to me. And so if they don't get a sense of that from the organization they're looking at joining, that's going to be a problem. I also like, you're being very clear that, and for everyone listening, you'll know appealing to the head through the data is very important. A couple of other pieces we're working with companies on is not being dualistic. And what I mean by that is it's not one or the other. It's not, we've got to be diverse or we've got to be uniform.
White people,
yeah. It's like either be uniform or either diverse. No, it's this whole mix of it all. It's not, I either have my job or I lose my job. It's too dualistic. It's one or the other. It's not, life is not like that, actually. It is about bringing it together and being able to hold the two strands in tension, which is, yes, we have too many, we're too uniform, and we recognize we need to be more diverse. So how do we bring those together? And then lastly, I think, and you're doing this really well, Jay, even in this conversation we're having, is keeping the conversation open. I really encourage you. I'm hearing this so often at the moment that people don't know how, I'm talking from HR and people teams through to leaders, don't know how to have these conversations. And they're worried, there's a bit of fear. It's like, but if you close the conversation down, it gets worse. Yeah, for sure. Because people go into hiding in that sense, and then you don't know if they're changing behaviors or changing mindsets. So it's like having what I call no eggshells rule. We can't walk on eggshells because if you do, being respectful, of course, but if people were worried about walking on eggshells, then they won't go for it. They'll just stop and go, I'm not going anywhere near that. So how do we have a wide open conversation that's really respectful? And finds a way through. We're about probably 5 minutes from opening this up for questions. So really, really want you thinking about that. Please do. We're trying a whole new approach today, so don't let us down. Do give a thumbs up to Lucy or a hands up, and then she'll unmute you and you can ask your question to Jay or myself. But just a couple of other things I want to dig into a little bit here, because we looked at the research too that you did. And I think one of the things we saw is Gen Z, here we go, perfect, are demanding a lot from their leaders. They expect them to be part of the team, to be fair and friendly, but at the same time take responsibility for getting things done. And they expect them to take responsibility if things go wrong, which is really interesting, because a lot of corporate life that makes it through to like the news is it's a bit like politics, actually. People not necessarily taking responsibility for mistakes, but it was the weather. The dog ate my homework, whatever it is, but it's never someone going, I got that wrong. And I have to say, 2 weeks ago, we had the CEO of Waits Group on, who actually, on our webinar, admitted that he got some things wrong at the beginning of the conversation around diversity and inclusion. Out of nervousness, out of fear. and some great comments coming through of people going, wow, so good. And I know how much bravery that took him to do that, but it was important that he did, to take the ownership. But so tell us a bit more about this, what Gen Z are looking for from their leaders, because everyone on wants to know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, 100%. So the first thing that we found when looking, speaking to our community and obviously doing this qualitative research was that they want their leaders to lead with purpose. So I think gone are the days where it's kind of like who's your CEO? I have no idea. I have no idea who they are. I don't really connect with them. They want that person to be front and center going, hey, this is our purpose. This is how we're leading. This is what's important to us. And then the second one we were looking at was they want leaders to be accessible and, sorry, cover the screen. accessible and conscientious. So for them, it's going, actually, you know what? Like I was saying a second ago, it's the ability for the person as an individual to feel like the whether this is this most senior person in the company or whether this is lower level executives, they want them to be accessible. They don't want to be a person that's not personable. I know this isn't for everybody, because you look at my personality type, like, yeah, Jay, it's easy for you to be accessible because you don't ever shut up. But for some people, you might be introverted, like, hey, this isn't really my bag. I'm not really looking to go giving people hugs in the office. Don't give people hugs during COVID, but you know what I mean. Giving people hugs during the office. But Gen Z want you to be accessible. And that can be done in various ways. That can be done with that, hey, here's every week, just type in the questions you want to ask, and I will get those and I will give you your responses via email. It doesn't have to be actual physical connection, wherever it may be. It's just loads of different ways to work around that. And the conscientious piece is obviously understanding that the world is different, the world is changing, and understanding that. The third and the second to last one that we'll mention is the hybrid of work from home and office work. And a lot of people have said to me in the past, they said, Gen Z can't wait to get into the office, they're so excited. But when we looked at our data, it's actually the other way around. They were really keen to do a nice, healthy mix of both. They wanted to work from home and office work. On average, when we did the work with Gymshark and also same Impulse, it was 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. They wanted that balance, and it was normally Monday and Friday at home, obviously, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office. So it's having a healthy mix. And here at Imagine, Imagine Insight, so we're exactly the same. We do our working hours are 10 to 4, and then we do 2 days in the office in the week and 3 days at home, depending on what people want. And the last thing to mention, I know you're going to come and say something amazing. Encourage employees to have hobbies. Yeah. This is a big one. So at the end of every single call, every single day, Imagine Insights, we say to everybody, what are you doing tonight? What are your hobbies? What are you getting off to? And that's encouraging to say, have a life outside of work. And this is what Gen Z were talking about, really talking about a lot, sorry. They were saying, hey, I want my boss, I want my team, I want my leaders to encourage me to have hobbies, encourage me to have things outside of work. And even one of our community members says, actually, you know what? Help us to do that. Pay for certain things, remember it's gym members, whatever it may be, do these things that they could help us to have hobbies outside of work, so we can have a life outside of work, so it doesn't become our entire world. I can go on to the call response to the second point.
Yeah, no, thanks. There's just so much in there. I just want to dig more into it. And don't worry, we're seeing the questions in the chat, so we will come to some of that in a moment. As I said, I'm really keen. Let's hear some other voices come through and ask a question. But a couple of things for me is when we did we've done lots of return to work surveys for companies. We actually interestingly saw 2 days a week in the office and 3 days from home. So it's interesting that, as you said, this and other research you've done was 3 days for Gen Z. So not actually that much difference, but very important to hear everyone listening. Hopefully another value bomb. Actually, there is a hybrid required. So whilst, because it's interesting, the government are really pushing get back because they all want you back, as in those coming into them. It's not fair on those coming into the workplace, but actually Gen Z themselves are saying, no, we're comfortable with that. We're okay with a hybrid models, which is interesting to hear. Second thing is, I really like the message and the piece of content that came out about invest in us in the hobbies, because it's a really holistic approach to an employee, and hopefully those of you listening will sort of have spotted the same, which is, again, I would say over watching this work out in corporates, and lots we work with, from like ASOS to Rolls-Royce to Balfour Beatty to everyone in between. And I'm not saying what I'm about to say is about those companies in particular, but giving you a sense of who we work with. One thing that comes out is often companies have gone for the sort of, again, the slightly performative, hey, we've got a gym, aren't we cool? You know, hey, we let you have 1 day off to do whatever you want. Or, hey, we've got a charity that we give you a day to go and support. And I think what's really struck me as we looked at this research was actually, it was deeper than that. People were saying, no, understand me and help me build a life, which is quite different, right, from my generation, which might just be above millennial, which was like, it was very much more about, no, I'm just here to work.
Yeah.
And certainly those older than me, it wasn't necessarily that they wanted work involved in their whole wider life.
Yeah.
So that's quite anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that with Gen Z, it's one of the things where you see it's like the rise of the side hustle was really big with millennials, is the idea of having things outside of work. And I think it was the businesses, whatever it may be. And Gen Z watch millennials do that and see the cataclysmic mistakes that we've made, where we kind of like had too many side hustles, we burnt ourselves out and nearly died. And with Gen Z, for a lot of them, they're going, actually, you know what? I love having a full-time job. They want to have that full-time job, and they want to have the side hustles, and they want to have these hobbies. But for them, it's their employer allowing them, giving them the freedom to do that and make them feel comfortable while doing it. And I think the great thing about Gen Z is because they're the last generation to come along, they've kind of been able to look at all the mistakes that Matt and I, and Matt's generation, my generation, obviously the same generation, obviously, and our generation have made, the mistakes we've made, and then they're able to learn from them because they've got the digital, they're digital natives, they've got these digital products that allow them to do all those things seamlessly. So it's almost the world of home and work and hobbies is kind of meshed into one. So for them, they don't see these differentiators. They see it all as one thing, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I just have to tell my little anecdote of my 12-year-old son saying to me literally about 3 weeks ago, so Dad, what's your side hustle? I went, son, I'm a CEO of a company. It's not the biggest company, right? But it's pretty full time. He's like, yeah, but everyone needs a side hustle, Dad.
My side hustle's keeping you alive. That's my side hustle.
I was like, okay, I need a side hustle. What? I don't know what that is, but anyway. And then just one last thing, and thank you. I know Lucy's encouraging you all to get ready to raise your hand, but we're gonna one last thing on leadership, and then we'll pause, see if there's any questions, and we'll look at the Q&A and chat and make sure we're up to date on that. But one other thing we really noticed as we went through the data you'd collected, thank you for doing that, and got back, was there's real desire from Gen Z that their leaders focus on using influence to build a strong relationship through trust, not using the hierarchy and the kind of badge, if you like, which again, I would say is a trend that's been happening for some time, but it came across really clearly. Influence me, build trust with me. Don't just come and play the I'm the boss, do as I say. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think you definitely see the start with like Netflix generation, like that when Netflix first started, they were one of the first real companies that were kind of like, hey, the flat hierarchy type thing. Like if you're in a meeting, we can all say whatever outside of a meeting. We're all on the same level. Obviously, the bosses still need to, the executives still need to make the overall decisions, but everybody can get involved. And what you're seeing with Gen Z, they live in a world where everybody's accessible. So if I want to get hold of Matt, I just find him on LinkedIn. If I want to get hold of so-and-so on Instagram, it's very easy to find him, or so-and-so on TikTok, and I can just DM them. So they're very used to this accessibility. So they're very used to be able to, if I wanted to, realistically, I'm probably only a few people removed from Kanye West if I wanted to be. Like, it's very easy for me to get hold of these people, and I could put out a piece of content and catch this celebrity's eye and change my entire life. So because this is the world that they've grown up in, they're taking that mentality to work, where they're going to work and going, actually, you know what? If as a leader, you are my boss, but at the same time, you're as accessible as these people out there, and if not more accessible. So they're saying, hey, don't lead from a place of, hey, I'm the boss, do what I say. It's actually leading from places, hey, we're all in this together. And realistically, when we go back to what we were saying earlier about having that purpose, that company purpose that everyone can buy into, as the boss, you're going, hey, we're all trying to do this together because this is what we're trying to build collectively. And I think it's really interesting and definitely a great point to finish on. So.
Yeah, I just love it thinking about some of the corporates that we know, thinking this is going to be so fun over the next 10 years of it's very, very different. It's been on that trajectory, but it's going to be very, very different. And I'm thinking particularly of line managers. I've probably coached 10,000 line managers over the last 10 years. And yeah, it's going to take a lot of change and a lot of different skill sets like listening, empathy, getting on people's wavelengths, understanding how they're thinking, which is quite different Like, it would never cross my mind to think I'm 2 degrees removed from Kanye West, and hey, I could probably get hold of him. It's not something that, you know, I'd go like, he's I wouldn't even cross my mind. So look, you've listened so patiently. So what we want to do is just take a pause. We're about halfway through. Just over. You know, I always like, if you've ever come on before, I always like to finish about 5 minutes early, just to give you back a little bit of time, the gift of time, so you can go to the toilet, you can get your next drink, whatever it might be, before your next meeting. So with about 20 minutes left, let's just have a little look at the chat so we can see what's going on. So we have here, and then, if anyone's got a question, please let Lucy know, and we'll bring you on so we can hear your lovely voice and maybe even see you, and then you can ask Jay or myself or both of us questions. So 16-year gap between myself and my husband. Even as Gen X, I cannot work out how they stayed in the same role for nearly 40 years. Yeah, like your point. That's very, very true. There was a kind of just expectation, wasn't there, that you get your role and you
don't leave. You stay here till you die.
Yeah,
you get a Rolex for doing 20 years.
Yeah, although they gave up with the Rolex.
Oh, did they?
They got rid of all that. Saving money, apparently. I worked with a great CEO who moved his desk on each level of the office of floors to sit amongst the team and visit the building sites, plus have a walking wall for comments for whiteboards. Yeah, fantastic. What do you think? Is that the kind of thing Gen Z?
Yeah, definitely.
Being in amongst the team, not trying to say I'm in my nice new.
Yeah, I love that. And it's in the chat, guys. If you wanted to see this, it's in the chat. So Danielle said, basically CEO was moved themselves around the building, was just really accessible. They're really accessible. And I think that's something definitely that Gen Z would love, because they just want to know you're normal human beings. That's 90% of the battle. And this is what I say to a lot of our clients, whether it's Red Bull or Amazon Prime Video. Gen Z just want to see the face behind the brand. And that's the thing that's important. They just want to see, who is the CEO? Who's this mystical CEO that we never see from? And normally it's like, he'll send out, or he or she or they will send out a monthly newsletter. And now it's shifting. It's like, hey, actually, we want to see them. We want to not touch them. Doesn't sound weird, but we want to get to know them. We want to understand who they are.
The downside of that is there's been a couple of occasions where it's the Wizard of Oz moment, and they see behind the gun and they go, oh,
you're a real human being with flaws.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like, okay, that's normal. That's how people are. Mercedes, you've asked any advice for creating these benefits for Gen Z without alienating other populations? Great thought. I like where your mind's going. Who may not be so keen to have a side hustle? Are there any big asks that appeal to all generations where we can find common ground?
Yeah, good question. I think the purpose side of things is one thing that all generations, especially ones that are currently in the workforce, is important to them. So I think that's definitely the idea of like, hey, we're all in for a common purpose. I think that, answering your second question, is probably the not alienating other generations while focusing on Gen Z. I find the best way to do that, and it's different for every organization. This is why I always encourage brands or companies, whoever, to talk internally to their employees. And we always say, talk to our Gen Z community, so you can understand what they want from you. I think it's very easy for me to say these blanket statements about what will work across all organizations, but it's not necessarily true. And I think the best way to do this is really to pull out various members of your organization from different generations, get them in a room and be like, hey guys, we want to encourage XYZ. How do you think we could do that well, do that authentically, and make it? And what you'll find from doing that, there'll be common ground, there'll be common things that they all land on that will be super important for them. And I think it will differ in organization to organization, because what 3 generations within an architect firm will be wildly different to what 3 generations in a marketing or a branding company want. It'll be 2 different things. But I think it's talking to your folks internally, doing that piece of work, and that might take a while, doing that piece of work, and then enabling yourselves to hear from them. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I really like that point, and I would just add to it. It isn't something that gets fixed in a moment.
Yeah.
So I liked your thing of keep the conversation going. It's going to take some time, and start it now, because Gen Z are hitting the workplace, hard now. So starting it now, if you're not in those conversations as an organization, going, hey, how do we welcome the next generation coming through who is different? Yeah. I think even that is a sort of start point. The other bit I just pick up on, Mercedes, that I think you were saying, Jay, as well, as purpose, belonging, well-being actually matter to other generations. And this is the point you were making. It's about the degree to which they matter.
Yeah,
and so in a sense, I might say, slightly wrong language. It's slightly more extreme in terms of what they're looking for in terms of belonging. It is the wrong language, forgive me, but I'm thinking as I'm talking. But so they are at a slightly different point on the trajectory.
Yeah.
But we're still all on the, yeah, we do want purpose. I want to be part of an
Yeah.
organization that's got purpose. I want a sense of belonging. So I think it's almost helping people to see that.
No, I love that for sure. Of those that you've shared, Mercedes asked again, love it, Mercedes. So many questions, you're the best. Of those that you've shared, are any of these priorities most likely to drive attention?
We didn't ask, so the honest answer is we didn't kind of ask that directly. For me, I thought the purpose, fulfillment, and sort of balance are very important to Gen Z. So the bit about the career trajectory.
Yes, I was just about to say that one. Yeah,
I'm using the wrong word, fulfillment, but that's effectively. I think that as we looked at the data, we thought that one really stood out to us.
And you said because one of the questions Matt and the team sent over was what would encourage you to stay with the company over a 5 to 10 year period, and it was a career trajectory one that came out time and time again. It was the idea of I just need to know where I'm going. I just need to. It's like when the kids, it's just like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And if you just tell them, actually, no, it's an hour-long journey. We're going to take 2 breaks, so on and so on. That's what they just want to know. They just want to know where are we going. You have to remember, because they're coming into the workplace. A lot of time when I was reading through some of the responses, some of them are really idealistic. They're like, oh man, I'd love this, and I get it, because you haven't been in the workplace. I've been in the workplace, and it's not going to happen like that. So my response would have been really tainted by, actually, you know what, I can't really say that. But they're coming in going, hey, you know what? For me, a clear career trajectory would be a thing that would encourage me to stay with the company for 5 to 10 years, which is actually a long period of time for Gen Z. So what we found with millennials are jumping from company to company on a regular basis. And Gen Z actually are shifting back. They're shifting back to wanting longer careers in companies, but they just want those companies to look after.
Just say to everyone, stay with us, because we are going to be going a little bit more into Gen Z and transparency. We're going to be looking at the work-life balance, and also we're going to be sharing their views on external recognition. So is it important to have best companies or IIP? What are their views on external recognition? So stay with us. We'll be coming back in about 10 minutes, but we want to stick with the questions if that's all right. So I think Gareth said, I'm communicating with a wide age generation at once. Do you suggest I split my internal messages by group, or just adapt my overall message to be more suited to Gen Zers? I'm going to jump in there first, and you have a think on that. For me, we are talking a lot about personalized engagement. And really this year, we've seen more than ever, personalizing how you engage people really matters. And of course, you can do that at the one, but we're certainly seeing it. There are certain demographics and segments that you need to think about how you engage them. Sometimes it's length of service is one. Definitely the generations is another. So from my perspective, I would really encourage you, yes, to think about tailoring some of your messaging and communication by some of the key segments that you see. And one of the best ways to do that is if you're doing any kind of engagement survey now, you'll see which segments are driving some of the engagement the most, and then choose those as your top ones to go after. Anything you want to add to that?
Nah, that's perfect. That's a great answer.
So, what would you suggest would be the most attractive recruitment methods for Gen Zers? Kerry, thanks for that.
Okay, good question. I think video is always great. I think the idea of putting stuff out there, video content out there that's easy and digestible for them to engage with, and I alluded to it earlier where I said 8 to 10 seconds is the window to grab their attention. If you look at go to the top 20 YouTubers in the world, and you'll see the first 8 to 10 seconds of any of their videos are just insane. They're the things that catch people. Once you catch them, then you normally can keep them for the video. I think it's about 1.5 minutes in. So I think video content will be a great way to engage with stuff that's kind of like, and it's like things like this on TikTok really, really do well. So random jobs you didn't know you could earn great money doing. Things like that is great, because it's kind of left field. You wouldn't expect Kerry, I don't know where you work, so you might want to drop that in, but random. So say for example, we do some stuff on TikTok around this, and we're going to be doing a lot more over the next few months, where you're going, okay, if you were as a 16 to 27-year-old, random ways to earn money earn part-time money as a Gen Z, and we're like, be an Imagine Insights consultant, make this much per year. Eat ice cream, be an ice cream taste tester, earn this much per year. And it's little hacks like that, and little things like that that really catch their eyes. Amazing, make alcohol drinks. So definitely you guys could do some really, really great content around really interesting things that can happen at your organization, or interesting roles in your organization that they wouldn't know exist. That's what I would do. Something cool around that, being like some great content, potentially created by Gen Z, where it's going, hey, these are the cool things you can do within our organization that you didn't know exist. Because most Gen Z will come to pretty much every brand and just go, you're going to have all these boring roles I'm not going to want to do, if we're being honest. So your way of just being like, hey, actually, these are cool, unique things that you can do and engage with if you came and worked our organization. Also, sorry, I know I'm gonna behind the scenes stuff. Gen Z are absolutely obsessed. And I have a monthly newsletter goes out. My last monthly newsletter was talking about 1 in 2 of our Gen Z community said that they love to hear the backstory. They love to hear the story behind a brand. They want to see the behind the scenes of what it's like to work at your organization. And I'm not talking like hey, this is a day in the life of Susan. It's actually like the raw, the laughter, the jokes, just the real stuff that they can go, actually, you know what? I engaged with this on TikTok. It looked hilarious. Yeah. It was then a link to the jobs that they had available, and I applied.
I'm laughing because I feel like you're adding a lot of value, and I'm just listening and enjoying listening to your value while I help facilitate. Just on this, a couple of others I really want to pick up on. I think Dexina, you said transparency is career, agree, but some things aren't appropriate to share. Any tips on how to draw the line between what stays in the boardroom, what gets shared? First thought for me is I always say to CEOs, go over on the transparency, because there's always a line, and CEOs and exec normally draw it way back, way too early. And so I always say go well over. It's a bit like being generous. Don't just like you have your generosity line, go way over being generous. And so I'd really encourage you to work with your exec and say, look, we know there's a transparency line, but we need to go over what we are comfortable with. Yeah. Typically at that point, you're at about where they'd like to start. Not end, about where they want to start. So they will accept that. That's what we've seen. So anything you want to share?
No, that's perfect. I think that's exactly what I would say.
Claire, I popped a question earlier where the data slide was up. How many Gen Z were interviewed to get the stats?
So it was 50 for this, and because we did 50 because we're focusing specifically on qualitative. So it's the rich answers that we were going for. If we were doing specifically a quant play, we'd go a much bigger data set, but it's specifically 50 for this one because we were focusing.
We're also a bit naughty. We took another data set you already had from about a month ago, which is quite a lot larger as well.
Yeah, that was 815.
Yeah. So it was kind of just supplementing to kind of see where it was at.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. Or how to communicate why it's staying in the boardroom and what. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I like how you've done it. Carried on. No one's putting up their hand to speak. You're very welcome to. But how do we communicate why it's staying in the boardroom? Why they can't know every detail? Yeah, definitely. So again, what we've seen with working with lots of companies where this comes out as an issue is keep being over communicate, over share why you've done what you've done. And by the way, the key bit to this though is be prepared for pushback.
Yeah.
Be prepared, and we're seeing this with. I mean, you need to talk more about Gen Z, but we're already seeing this in the workplace. People will go, yeah, but I disagree because, and it's getting exec used to that's going to happen, and it's going to happen even more. So if you are going to share why you haven't, you've got to have some good reasons. And sometimes just saying it's market data, you actually need to go in, it's market sensitive, which I remember hearing loads of times when I used to work for Aviva, the insurance company, we have to hold this data. Fair enough, but then you have got to explain a bit more why, because for a lot of people come in, they're like, well, I don't understand, why can't you tell the market? And because they don't necessarily know. So Amy, it's got a question for you, Jay. Apart from hybrid working and clear progression, what other benefits are Gen Z looking for?
Yeah, good question. I think for them, the key part of working in an organization is obviously that we're speaking about the purpose, but it's being able to go, actually, you know what? I'm coming to an organization and I can add value. They want to be able to add value. They want to know what they're doing is actually moving the needle. And I think a lot of the time and we'll all be part of this, we're in our careers, we've gone, actually, I don't know if what I'm doing today is actually helping to move the needle in any way, shape or form. And I think when we're looking at the minutiae of it, it's actually going, hey, you doing this today, or you doing these tasks that we've given you over this next month, this is how it's actually adding value. And I think if you can do that clearly, they get really excited about it. Obviously, there's all the normal things of like gym memberships and access to well-being practices and all those different bits and pieces. But I think there's no perfect answer. It's really what works for your organization. The best way to figure that out is actually to ask the Gen Z within your organization what they'd be looking for. So I always push back and just say, hey, ask them. ask them what they'd be looking for specifically from you guys. But Matt might have something on that.
No, I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time. We've got about 6 minutes left. I want to get these questions done. I'm going to let you answer Luke's in a moment. I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. If there's one thing that would make one change to engage with your Gen Z workshop, what would it be? I'm going to go to Aisha's question. I love everything you've been saying, and many of my colleagues would agree. However, the challenge is often the senior people leading Gen Z are very different. Definitely, we've been talking about that, who just don't get it and they refuse to try. Do you have any advice? Yes, risk management. They love that word. Those senior people I've often in those rooms and they love. So I would be selling this as this is a risk management issue. What's the risk? That we miss attracting the best new talent.
Yeah.
And that is a huge worry for people because everyone knows the market's super hot right now and it's hard to get the best people. So I'll be saying to them, this is a risk management issue that we have to learn to manage this different generation. And that means that you've got to go on a journey. And it's no different to a lot of the sessions I've been running, I'm sure you've been running, Jay, around diversity and inclusion over the last 18 months with organizations, taking the leaders on a journey of understanding how they need to approach it, how they need to think about it, how they need to change, because there's so much unconscious bias, there's so much learned behavior through corporate and their own personal experiences. So I'd really play on the risk management of this could really impact our organization if we don't sort it out and go on that one. I hope that helps. But let's go back to Luke's question. So one thing that would make one change to engage the Gen Z workforce, what would it be?
Yeah, Luke, I was thinking about this the entire time. And actually, it's one I said a second ago, actually just about showing them how they can specifically add value. I think this role that we're recruiting for will add value to the organization, and this will actually probably starting at the top end. So when we do any of our OKRs or anything like that with our team, we will say, okay, these are our overall project targets for 2024. To get to these, we need you to be doing X, Y, Z. So this is how your day-to-day tasks add into that overall OKR target that we have. And I think clearly putting that in the role that you're advertising for, being like, hey, your role will enable us to do this, which will then enable us to hit that. When you do that for them, that's part of the career trajectory piece, but it's also clearly saying to them, you're actually adding value. You're not just a cog in the machine. You're not just a random person within an organization. You're actually adding value day in, day out by what you're doing. And it gives that sense of purpose, because really, we haven't really had that in organizations. I don't think, as far as I understand, where it's gone, actually, you know what? You doing this will help us to do that. Normally it's, we need you to do this. Why? We just do it. But if actually we can go, actually, you doing this will help us to do that, it gives that clear understanding for them.
Yeah, and what I would say for those listening, and stick with us, say we've got 2 more points we want to get across that are really hoping to help you a lot, and then we'll wrap up. But it's been an intention there, I would say, Jay, for people to do that. But line managers are often too busy. They never really, or leaders, they never actually do that bit, which is you're not just a cog in the wheel. Let me explain why. More often than not, it's don't ask, just get on with it. So you are right. So I think the intention has been there, possibly even over the last 10 or 15 years, but often it's never really followed through. Yeah. So it's a behavioural change, I would say. But I'm really hoping that helps, Luke, because I think it's a really powerful point, which is showing them that their role matters. And whereas probably my generation would have just done it anyway, because no, well, I get the money or whatever. I think you've very clearly said today, Gen Z won't. They'll go, no, there's no purpose here. There's no sense of my role matters, therefore I'm moving on. We're almost there. Claire, you've made a really good point, and I think we just need to clarify this. If we use TikTok, would they trust that 76% said it's least trusted data, or that it's different to attract people to the company? I think that was the point, it's trusted. So if you're talking about some very serious point, where they're going to trust that information. So we're talking about coronavirus, they go, I'm not going to believe necessarily TikTok, I'm actually going to believe my family and my friends, which can also be good or bad, depending on where your family and friends are. Whereas when it comes to trying to attract, I think that's a slightly different point.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Claire. I always argue that TikTok, Instagram, all those, and Snapchat, so on and so on, that's about shouting about what you're doing. It's, hey, this is what we're up to, and this is why it's amazing, and this is why you should love us. But yeah.
Super. A couple of little things we just want to touch on, and then we will draw this to a close, and I'll hand back to Lucy. We said we'd tell you about the work-life balance, and so just to give it a little bit more from what we found out is it's absolutely vital that they can feel flexible. So I'd really encourage you to think about how you can help Gen Zers think that they're in a very flexible hybrid role, which means being clear on required outcomes and what's expected for them. So that's about leaders setting parameters and being able to coach their employees to operate effectively within that. So again, there's a bit of onus on the leaders to do that. And then the last one I just wanted to touch on, Jay, and get your view was, we wanted to know, does external recognition, like being recognized by best companies or investors in people, does it really matter? And it was actually very mixed. So it was around a score of 3 out of 5 people saying it mattered. And I was intrigued by that external indicators didn't seem to matter as much as the company having purpose, there being a clear career trajectory, and most importantly, and I think you said this right at the top of, there being emotional connection to the organization. Anything you?
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, that we're going to why did we disappear? Oh, okay, we're still there. I think for a lot of them, the importance, a lot of your organizations will be their first job. So for them, they want to get in somewhere that's adding value to them, but they also can add value too. So I definitely think the external, we've won awards and that kind of stuff is great, but really what they care about is actually, in my day-to-day life, how is this going to add value to me, and how can I add value to it? And that's, I think, when we look at it from a granular perspective, that's the thing that's important.
Yeah, fantastic. Listen, on that note, I'm going to say a massive, massive thank you to Jay. Stick with us for 2 minutes because we'll share our next webinar that's coming up in about 2-3 weeks' time. And Lucy will share more in a moment. But I just want to say a huge thank you to Jay. I think that the insights, hopefully, you found really valuable. I certainly have. And I'll let Lucy share and explain all that's happening next. But thank you, Jay, for coming on and being part of it today.
Thanks for having me.